Hello and welcome to The Urbanist, Monocle's programme all about the built environment. I'm your host, Andrew Tuck. Coming up.
My goal is not to transform city directly, but to create environments where transformation becomes possible, quietly, personally, and organically.
We start with a South Korean contemporary artist who joins us to discuss the country's relationship with public art through the lens of their recent installation in Seongnam. Then we head to the Emirates to hear from the winner of Dubai Design Week's annual Urban Commissions competition. Plus, the new president of Riba joins us to discuss their appointment to the position a few months ago. And the Institute's recently announced Asia Pacific Awards too. That's all ahead in the next 30 minutes, right here on The Urbanist with me, Andrew Tuck. It's undoubtable that South Korea has become one of the cultural heavyweights on the world stage, with the country's music, TV and cinema having a massive impact beyond its own borders. So how does the country embrace public artworks? And how does the built environment interact with installations, both temporary and permanent? South Korean contemporary artist Jinjoon Lee recently joined Monocle's Tom Edwards in our studios in London to talk about his craft and how he sees locals' relationship with public artworks. Tom began by asking Jinjoon Lee to introduce himself and the work that he does.
I'm Jinjoon Lee. I'm a media artist and professor at KAIST. It's Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, South Korea's leading science and technology university. My lab is like MIT Media Lab, a place where artists, scientists, and engineers work together to shape new forms of creative experience. I often describe myself as an artist who creates experience of spatial transition. I'm interested in those moments when a familiar place suddenly feels different. When nature, technology, and human body overlap, and when people sense a quiet shift in how they relate to the world. My practice is influenced by Korean and East Asian idea of gardens and in-between space, liminality, where the boundary between reality and imagination becomes fluid.
Tell us a little bit about your recent work from September, just a couple of months ago, because I think that amazing confluence of all these ideas really embodies what you're talking about. But tell our audience a little bit about what you did in September.
Yeah, the project is called Cine Forest, Awakening Bloom, presented at Bundang Central Park as the opening of the Seongnam Media Festival just a couple of months ago. We transformed nearly 200 meters of forest into a large open-air theater using 16 ultra-high-resolution projectors, lasers, orchestra music, and eventually the sound of the 1,000 voice choir. Over the 19 minutes program, we presented 10 pieces. One was new work that I composed with the help of AI, a human arranger, and conductor, and live performers. The other 9 were reinterpretation of the film Music About War. I chose this because war destroys both human lives and the nature world, and placing those melodies back into a live, living forest creates a powerful contrast between destruction and renewal. So we also invited 1,000 local residents as well to rehearsal and to sing with us. So the community's presence and breath became a vital layer of the performance itself. To make the environment respond to all these human and AI voices, we drone, scanned, and three-dimensional mapped the entire forest. The tree shifted colored like autumn leaves turning, and at times the whole landscape seems to breathe and move with the choir, as if the forest itself were participating in the performance.
When you prepare a work, you can prepare the sonic experience, the lights, all of the logistics, but what I guess you can't prepare for is the reaction of that audience. You mentioned members of the public who were there. Tell me a little bit about what was their reaction, because as you said, they became part of the performance. What was their reaction like?
The direction was much stronger and more emotional than I expected. Many visitors said they felt as if they had stepped into the dream, not a normal concert or normal artwork, but space where the forest, the sound, the people were breathing together. Some people told us the experience brought back childhood memories of the walking in nature at night. The other said the combination of the world film music and the living forest made them think about fragility, loss, and the possibility of healing. And for the citizens and audiences, the experience was incredibly meaningful. They felt proud because they weren't just watching something. They were part of the artwork itself, co-creating the space with their own voices. So many of them even turned on the lighting on their mobile phones and waved them gently in the dark, singing along and moving with the forest as it shifted. The simple gesture, lighting, sound, and motion made the whole environment feel even more alive, as if community, the choir, the forest were breathing together at once. The biggest response we heard again and again was that people had never seen public art that felt this alive, this communal, and this emotional deep.
And tell me a bit about what your perception is of the relationship with public art in South Korea. This is in Seongnam, of course, but if we look at the country broadly, my sense is always there's a very high social capital across the country, to generalise, and that people are very invested in shared experience, in community resources. But how would you describe the relationship with public art generally?
I think South Korean cities are improving, but the relationship is still developing. Korea has incredible artistic talent and some of the most advanced technology in the world. But public art is often treated as an object to be installed rather than experience that people can enter and share together. In many cases, the focus is still on creating landmark or decorations instead of building spaces where people can feel, reflect, or connect emotionally. And I think that where the real potential of the public art lies, not in the object itself, but in the experience it creates and the community it brings together. So the good news is that this is changing. Projects like Cine Forest showed that when technology and nature, people come together, public art can become something truly communal and transformative. South Korea is moving in that direction, I feel, and I believe the next decade will open much more space for experimental, emotional, and participatory forms of public art.
Tell me about why public art matters. I mean, this seems in a way a kind of facile question because you described the experience already with Cine Forest. It built community, people felt moved emotionally. It's so powerful. But why does it matter for cities in particular that they really engage with public art with real intentionality? Why is that important?
Public art is important because it gives a city something that buildings and infrastructures alone cannot provide: a shared emotional life. Cities are made of concrete, data, and efficiency, but they are also made of people, their memories, their fears, their hopes, their sense of belongings. The public art creates moments where strangers pose together, feel something together, and recognize that they are part of the same place. It can turn a busy street into a moment of reflection, a park into a space of healing, or forest into a temporary cathedral of sound and light. And in a time when both human and nature are often exhausted or damaged, public art reminds us that spaces can be cared for, transformed, and made meaningful again. That is why public art matters, not because it decorates a city, but because it helps people experience the city as a living, emotional environment, one that they share with others.
You put that beautifully. Do you try then, with your work, are you seeking to change people's perspective? Is that an active ambition? Because it's interesting, you talked about working in liminality, in those liminal spaces. Is one of your objectives to give people some certainty in uncertain times, to give them something to hang on to? Do you try at the beginning of a project, even as ambitious as Cine Forest, are you seeking to change people's perspectives?
Well, to be honest, I don't try to change people or cities in a direct or forceful way. Art shouldn't tell people what to think. Instead, I try to open a space, a moment, when someone feels that the world around them has shifted. even slightly. So when our forest begins to breathe within 1,000 voices, or when technology and nature respond to each other in real time, people often experience a small change inside themselves, a pause, a question, a sense of connection, or simply a feeling that they never expected. So if that moment stays with them, they carry it back into their daily lives, and when individuals change even a little, the city changes with them, not through instruction, but through their experiences. So my goal is not to transform city directly, but to create environments where transformation becomes possible quietly, personally, and organically.
Jinjoon Lee there in conversation with Tom Edwards, and my thanks to them both. We head to Dubai now for the city's Design Week. Inaugurated 10 years ago, this annual celebration continues to promote design in the UAE's most populous city. Among its exhibitions and workshops, the event also holds an annual competition called Urban Commissions. This year's winning proposal was titled, "When Does a Threshold Become a Courtyard?" by UAE-based design and research studio Some Kind of Practice. Monocle's man in Dubai, Inzamam Rashid, went along to meet one of the founders of Some Kind of Practice and explore their winning commission.
At the very heart of Dubai Design District, amid glass towers and polished storefronts, a humble courtyard has quietly stolen the show. It's called When Does a Threshold Become a Courtyard?, the winning entry for Urban Commissions 2025 by UAE-based studio Some Kind of Practice. Founded by architects Abdullah Abbas and Amal Darwish, the studio's installation sits like a pause in the city, open, porous, and instinctively familiar. Built from concrete blocks, plywood, and arish, woven palm fronds, it feels more like a majlis than a monument.
We wanted to look at what makes a courtyard a courtyard. We look at it historically, programmatically, functionally, but also materially. So when you look at the materials in the courtyard, that was a huge part of it as well. So when you look at it from outside, you're questioning like what's happening. Like it has a specific form. You see a lot of arish. You also have a bit of the concrete blocks peeking at the bottom. But when you enter into the space, the courtyard is protected. So you walk into this transitional circulation space where you get this connection to the sky as well, and then you walk into the courtyard. So historically and traditionally, the courtyard is always protected.
The courtyard unfolds gradually. You step through a shaded passage, the Liwan, a traditional Emirati threshold, before arriving at an open-to-sky clearing. The light dances across the arish screens. The air feels lighter, cooler.
When you walk into a building, you never walk directly into the building. You usually enter what we call a Liwan. So the Liwan is this transitional space that brings you from the outside into the courtyard. But the function of a courtyard was always multifunctional. Depending on the season, usually, the courtyard is either used or not used. So it's a very flexible space. During the winter periods, families would usually come outside and sit together, and sometimes would even like bring out their beds and sleep outside. So what we also did with our space is we left it empty. It's a multifunctional space. Throughout the week, we're going to have multiple programming that happens, which will transform the space. So for example, we will have a lecture that happens. We're also going to have like a dining experience where we're going to be arranging like a central table that will be underneath this aperture. So that is also in how the courtyard used to be used functionally.
Abdullah and Amal's design stems from months of fieldwork, travelling across the Emirates, from mountain villages in Fujairah to abandoned homes in Al Quwain. They studied how the old Hoosh courtyards were shaped by climate, craft and community.
One of the major things that we wanted to look at is proof of materiality, because we always hear about materials like arish or even like stone or corrugated sheet. We kind of see it, but we wanted that proof. So through our field work, we went to like this abandoned neighborhood in Al Quwain. So when we went over there, a lot of it has been demolished now, or like through time it's withered. But that's where we see the Liwan. Why did we want to do this? Because we didn't want to go to one of the recreated villas. We wanted to go and find villas that have been preserved from back then and untouched. Even though they haven't withstood the toll of time, the Liwan is very much present. The Hoosh, the courtyard, is very much protected. part of our research is we wanted to connect the three biomes of the UAE. The three biomes being the coastal regions, the desert regions, and the mountainous region. Materially, for example, in the mountainous regions, they used to stack rocks to form their boundary. But what we did is we also wanted to combine it with current architectural practices. So we wanted to make it a point where you do get some of this newer material. So we replaced the stone with concrete blocks, but we maintained the wood. So this wood is all been sourced here from the UAE. Everything completely off the shelf. The Arish panels were brought from Jebel Ali, but they're originally from Ajman. The Arish was sourced from Ajman. So we got like the local craftsmen also to come and install their Arish panels. So the entire thing, nothing has been imported.
It's a design that builds with what's present, not imposed, a principle the studio hopes to see revived in contemporary Emirati architecture.
Unfortunately, the connecting factors are minimal because nowadays we've completely changed the way we build our houses. So for example, in the past, the boundary of the building was the start of the house. There was no boundary wall and then the house begins. So you enter directly into the house most of the time. Nowadays, we have four walls surrounding our villas, and then you have a villa at the center of it, which could be interpreted as a courtyard. Those boundaries are still maintaining that privacy. They're still doing the function of what it was, but architecturally, the way we construct our houses has completely changed. Luckily, there are a lot of houses that you will find to this day where they have a boundary wall, but they still have a courtyard at the center of their house. So what Umar and I are kind of looking at is to kind of bring back that thinking, to bring back that type of architecture, because I feel like it was something that we left too early.
When I walked inside, it felt instinctively familiar, like a majlis awaiting coffee and conversation.
All you have to do is put up some seating and it becomes a majlis.
Becomes a majlis. It's literally the first thing I thought when I walked in.
Exactly.
Was like, it is designed obviously for kind of multi-purpose.
Yeah.
But straight away the feeling I got was like, sit
100%.
down, it's a majlis.
Yeah,
You can really fit it out like that.
Especially in the outdoors, when the weather's a lot nicer, the Arish is an extremely porous material. It's not blocking wind from coming in. You don't feel stuffy on the inside. It's not even dusty. That wind coming in and out is a huge part of it. And this aperture is also adding to that as well.
Beyond beauty, some kind of practice champions material honesty and reuse, what Abdullah calls design for disassembly.
One thing I think that's really, really huge, it's happening a lot in the world, but this idea of design for disassembly. So especially for temporary structures like this in D3, we made sure that most of the materials that you see over here can be returned and reused for other purposes. So for example, the wood is going to be returned. All of the Arish is going to be returned to other sites because the company that we worked with specialized in Arish and Arish construction. So from here, it's going to go to maybe the National Day celebration that's going to be happening next month. That idea, I think, is really, really important, especially for temporary structures, especially, again, in the outdoors. So in the UAE, we're very seasonal. In the winter, a lot of these things pop up. So why not build something like this that is really lightweight, very cheap, not that difficult to assemble, doesn't need to be overly clean and perfected, but can be put up as easily as it is let down.
It's a sustainability rooted in tradition, the same resourcefulness that once defined Gulf architecture. When does a threshold become a courtyard isn't just an installation, it's an argument for slowness, for shade, for sitting still even. A reminder that in design, as in life, meaning often lives in the spaces between.
My thanks to Inzamam Rashid for that report. The Royal Institute of British Architects inaugurated a new president in September this year, after the incumbent Muyiwa Oki completed his 2-year term. Chris Williamson is the new member at the helm, and he joined me recently to discuss, among other aspirations for his tenure, 2 newly announced awards in the Middle East and Asia-Pacific regions. I began by asking Chris what he's most excited about in his new role.
It's quite daunting because it's got a 200-year history. So I've ran my own architectural practice for 40 years, but you've only got yourself to account for in that situation. But you do feel sort of the weight of history which comes with a role like this. I'm looking forward to it. It's been fun so far.
I know from one of your predecessors, you get to wear a medal if you want to on occasion, and you get to turn up at all sorts of events. But what kinds of things? Because actually there's a serious side to it as well. You get access to government ministers, you can lobby, you can put forward proposals. What are the kinds of things that you're hoping to achieve as president?
Well, they are the things you've mentioned are the things I'm most excited about. I think we need to be more influential in political circles. So I've started a presidential advisory group because I think it's important that the government and regionally as well, both nationally and regionally, locally, we're seen as specialists. We have great knowledge, experts of all sorts of things, like we're at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, conservation, heritage. My particular specialism for the last 40 years has been infrastructure. Started off with the Jubilee Line project and just finished 2 Elizabeth Line stations and been able to do work like that, similar work internationally as well. But I think government doesn't always see us as having great specialisms. They often see us just generalists, and I think it's important that we stress that. So that's one of my major aims, is to get better connection. And so I was at the Labour Party conference stressing the importance of quality in the 1.5 million homes that we're trying to build. So I think getting quality in the built environment on the agenda is my major aim over the next 2 years. And I have had to get my 2-year plan past the board and council, so that should be adopted, and that's what we're working towards. And I have specific aims along the way to try and achieve that.
Just on that, because I'm intrigued, the number of 1.5 million homes, there is huge scepticism in the building trade about whether this is feasible. And as you say, feasible to deliver that quantity of homes at the pace during one administration and at quality. I know from speaking to many of your colleagues, there is also some concerns around that. What's your feeling as the president about what needs to happen to get anywhere near that figure and deliver it in a way that is sustainable? And it has this other thing that gets shunted into the sidelines so often, some beauty and some texture and some...
Yeah. I think we've certainly got the skills to do it in terms of design. I mean, one of the things I've done in the last 2 months is judge the Sterling Prize, and Appleby Blue that won that is a great example. That was for elderly living, but some of the quality of the work that UK architects do and Riba members is admired around the world. Another thing I've had to do in the last few weeks is phone up our nomination, which has to go to Buckingham Palace for the Royal Gold Medal. And that was a very emotional, phoning up somebody and asking them if they would accept it, if our nomination is accepted, is a very emotional thing to do. So in terms of design quality, we've got those skills. It's a big ask to build 1.5 million homes in what's rapidly running out to be 4 years rather than 5. So we have to involve small and medium enterprises in order to do that. We can't just rely on the volume house builders to achieve that quality. So I think we've put forward our suggestions and been lobbying government for how we could achieve that or help achieve that.
Now, Chris, you mentioned the Sterling Prize there, but Riba is involved in many UK prizes for architecture, for build quality, for best practice. But now you're spreading your wings, you're heading to the Middle East, you're heading to APAC and doing awards for those regions as well. Let's remind people that RIBA stands for the Royal Institute of British Architects, but many of the nominees are certainly not Brits and they're not in the UK. So what's happening here? What's the ambition?
I think we want to help raise design quality throughout the world. We know that our awards, the Sterling Prize, and the way that we set out our awards in contrast with most awards, we're very thorough in the way that they're judged. All the shortlisted entries are visited. So it's a very thorough process. I've judged other awards which are basically judged on the nicest photographs in a way. You often don't get to see the building. It's important to go and see the building, speak to the client, speak to the architects and look around it. That's how architecture should be judged. I think the thoroughness of the way that the RIBA Awards are set up is very important.
Tell me, for the Middle East edition, when we look at that region, it's fascinating actually meeting many UK architects as well. I know goes beyond the UK architecture, but the region is a great employer of British skill, and many of the people who are your members are certainly heading to the likes of Riyadh and Doha and Dubai. What are some of the projects that you've seen that have intrigued you?
I'm always impressed with the work internationally. There's a couple in particular. There's the Al Mujadila Centre, which is by Dilla, Scafidio and Renfra. They designed the road in Los Angeles and the High Line in New York. And that's a mosque and a centre for women. So it has a skills-based... Some of the programmes that come out are very exciting and very forward-thinking. The UK leads the world in design. We export a lot of skills. But I think my experience in working abroad is you can learn a lot from other countries as well and learn from what other countries are doing. Working in Australia, for example, customer care is a great thing, and that they always involve the customers in all of their transport projects, lots of research. So you learn lots of things from working in different places. And there's lots of innovation and new technologies. There's the World Food Waste Tea House in Dubai, which is by Mitsubishi Jishu Design, and that's using tea waste in construction. So like the Bartlett here in London, they're actually using natural materials in the construction industry. So there's some great innovations. And similarly in Asia Pacific, a lot of the work that's coming out of that region is incredibly innovative. Whereas maybe 10 years ago there was a lot of copying going on. Now it's really cutting edge design.
I always feel the same when we go to the likes of an Abu Dhabi or Dubai these days, that actually the knowledge that sits there now, it's a transference of knowledge back and forth. It's not that they're just recipients and they're not just clients. They're actually generating ideas and solutions, and especially when we think about climate. And I guess the same for when you look at APAC. Are there projects there that have excited you when you've seen them?
Yeah, no, there's the Shenzhen Energy Ring by Schmidt Hammer Lassian, and that's a waste energy power plant. So the program, again, is very important, very futuristic, very forward-looking. In Bangladesh, there's a fantastic project, the Brak University, which is on not just a brownfield site, which we try and put forward, but this is a derelict dumping ground, and it's now home for 20,000 students. And it's a very low-energy, cross-ventilation, natural scheme. So it's a fantastic profession, and to see the diversity of schemes that get put forward is wonderful. It's one of the great aspects of my job is being involved in this.
Chris Williamson, President of the Royal Institute of British Architects there, and my thanks to him for joining me in the studio. The winners of the Middle East Awards have just recently been announced, and the APAC Award winners will be announced in December. You can head to riba.org to find out more. And that's all for this week's episode of The Urbanist. You can follow us for new editions of the show every week, and you can subscribe to Monocle magazine for reports on all things design, architecture and urbanism too. Just visit monocle.com. The Urbanist is produced by Carlotta Ribello and by David Stevens, who also edits the show. I'm Andrew Tuck. Goodbye, and thank you for listening, City Lovers.